The story of Smoky the Crow. It comes from this book. There you can see the crow, huh? That's Smoky. Let's find out why he's called Smoky, okay? But let's begin with chapter 1. And this says, Peter and Carol go to the woods. Now there's a picture of Peter and Carol. They both live on a farm. They live on farms that are close to each other, but across a long field, so they can't shout to each other. As you'll see, they have another way to communicate. It's called arm talk, and we'll find out what that is. Out of the farmhouse came a boy and a big red dog. They ran to the fence. "Jump over, Pat," said Peter. Peter sat on the fence and looked across the field. He was looking for someone. School was out for the summer. Peter had so many things he wanted to do. He knew just the one to help him do them, too. "There she is, Pat." Now, Pat's the dog, said Peter. "There's Carol." And we had the two of them. There's Peter sitting on the fence, and there's Carol waiting by her front door. Summertime, so she had a screen door there. Peter was glad that Carol lived just across the field. He thought it was fun to play with Carol. Carol came out of the back door of her house. Did I say that was the front door? It's the back door. She was thinking of things she wanted to do. It was fun to have Peter to play with. Carol saw Peter across the field. She climbed on the fence to see what he was doing. He had something to tell her. She could not hear him, but she knew what he was saying. Peter stood on the fence on the other side of the field and talked with his arms. He put his two arms out. That said, "big tree." Then Peter put his right arm up. That said, "woods." "I know," said Carol. "He says we will go down by the big tree. Then we will go to the woods." Carol could talk with her arms, too. And here we have Carol talking with her arms. Carol's left arm went up, and her right arm went out. That said, "mother." She saw Peter say "mother" with his arms. They would have to ask their mothers before they went to the woods. Carol's arms went up and down. She saw Peter's arms go up and down. Arms up and down said, "done with talking." Carol jumped down from the fence and ran back to her house. Across the field came Pat, the dog. He jumped over the fence and ran to the house with her. Peter ran to his mother, too. "Oh, Mother," he called. "Yes, Peter, what is it?" said Mother. "Carol and I want to go down to the woods," said Peter. "Is Carol here?" asked Mother. "No," said Peter. "She's asking her mother if she may go." Mother looked into Peter's face. Then she looked across the field to Carol's house. "Peter," said Mother, "how do you know Carol is asking her mother?" Peter laughed. "We have our own way of talking across the field." He said, "It is arm talk. Carol and I have made it up the day school was out. We're going to use it all summer." Mother laughed, too. "You and Carol always think of something new," she said. "How do you say things with your arms?" "Oh, I must not tell you that," said Peter. "May I go down to the woods, Mother?" asked Peter. "Yes," said Mother, "you may go if Carol's mother will let her go." "I'll soon know about that," said Peter as he ran back to the fence. There was Carol coming out of the house. Peter climbed up on the fence. He put his two arms up for Carol to see. Peter saw Carol climb up on her fence. Her two arms went up. Peter knew what she was saying. "Yes, she can go," Peter called. "Goodbye, Mother." Peter saw Carol start for the big tree. He did not wait. Away he ran. Now we're at the big tree, and here we see. See, that's a nice picture of the three of them. That's the dog, Pat, and there's Peter and Carol. He's a nice big red dog. Peter ran to the big tree as fast as he could go. "I'll get there before Carol does," he said. He took off his hat so he could run faster. Carol saw Peter start on a run to the big tree. She knew what Peter was thinking. She ran faster than ever. Pat saw Peter, too. He knew where Peter and Carol were going. Pat was the one who got to the big tree first. Peter and Carol laughed when they met at the big tree. "It worked," cried Peter. "Yes, it worked," said Carol. "I knew what you were saying." Mother wanted to know how we did it, said Peter, but I didn't tell. My mother wanted to know all about it too, said Carol, but I didn't tell her. We can make up some more talk with our arms, said Peter. That'll be fun, said Carol. What would you like to do now, Carol? Asked Peter. We could go to the old house on the other side of the woods, said Carol. Would you like to do that, Peter? No, said Peter. I want to look for a crow's nest. Father said he heard some little crows in the woods. Pat can help us. Pat is a bird dog. I wish I had a pet crow. If we find a nest, you can't get a crow, said Carol. Crows' nests are high up in the trees. You could not climb up to get one. You're right, said Peter, but we can see if there are any little crows in the woods. All right, said Carol. We will go to the woods. The wind began to blow. Look out, Carol, said Peter. The wind will blow your hat off. Yes, it will, said Carol. I'll take my hat off. I'll take my hat off too, said Peter. I like the wind in my face. Now let it blow as hard as it wants to blow. Peter and Carol started to run. It was fun to be out in the wind. It was fun to run in the open fields. It was fun to be out of school. It was fun to think of the days and weeks of summer to come. Look, Peter, said Carol. Pat has found something. And here we see, yeah, there's Pat. He found something. See, his tail goes up like that. Yeah. Pat was looking into the grass at the side of the fence. He stood as still as a stone with 3 feet on the ground and 1 in the air, like this. What is it, Pat? Asked Peter. Just then Peter and Carol saw a bird fly up from the ground. Then Peter and Carol looked in the grass, and there they found a nest. In the nest were 4 blue eggs with brown spots on them. Peter and Carol looked into the nest. Pat came nearer and looked too. 4 little blue eggs with brown spots on them, said Carol. It is such a pretty nest. Come, Pat, said Peter. We must not stand too near the nest. We can look at the eggs, but the birds do not like us to have us put our hands on them. Peter and Pat went on. Just then Peter saw some crows go by overhead. And here they are, the crows are flying. Okay, they're going to the woods, Pat, he said. They have food in their mouths. They have something for the little crows to eat. Carol looked at the eggs a little longer, and then she left the nest. The mother bird sat on the fence and waited for Carol to go away. Carol wished she were a bird and could fly. She put out her arms like wings and played like she was flying. She ran to catch up with Peter. Peter was looking at the crows as they flew into the woods. Then Peter heard a crow call. Peter heard a crow. Peter heard a crow. Caw, caw, said the crow. I see it, said Peter. See, high up in the tree. Yes, I see it, said Carol. High up in the top of the tree sat a big black crow. He is the lookout, said Peter. He sees Pat and he sees us. He's telling the crows in the woods that we are coming. Pat was across the field now. He jumped over the fence and went into the woods. Whistle to him, said Carol. Peter whistled to Pat, but Pat did not seem to hear him. Pat may find a crow's nest for us, said Carol. He always finds something in the woods, said Peter. You know, every time we go down to the woods, something happens. We must hurry then, said Carol. We want to be there when things start to happen. Peter and Carol did not know it, but things had started to happen before they got to the woods. A crow family had a home in the woods. High up in a tree was the nest with 4 little crows in it. No one would try to climb up to that nest. It was too high in the tree, and there were no branches near the ground. On one of the branches high up in the tree was the nest of the crow family. Close together in the nest were the 4 little crows. Mother Crow was on her way back to the nest. Her mouth was full of food for the hungry little crows. All at once she heard the lookout crow. Caw, 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 he said. Mother Crow knew just what the lookout was saying. So she did not go right to the nest. She flew to a nearby tree. She sat very still and looked all about her. She could not see a thing. She could not hear a thing. So she flew down to the nest. Mother Crow made no noise, but the little crows in the nest made a big noise when they saw her. Each one said, caw, 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 caw. All four of the little heads in the nest came up. Each baby crow cried, caw, caw. To the mother crow, they seemed to say, hungry, hungry. They were always hungry. From morning to night, she worked to get enough food for the little crows. Mother Crow had her mouth full of food. She gave some to each little crow. She had a little food left, and she gave that to the one that made the most noise. There was one little crow that always made the most noise. He would push his brothers and sisters about in the nest, too. He was bigger than the other little crows. That was because he made the most noise and got the most to eat. He opened his mouth and wanted more, more, more. Oh, thought Mother Crow, will I ever get enough food for that hungry one? Away she flew to find more food. The wind blew and the trees shook. The little crows pushed close together. They were just a week old, and they did not have many feathers. The hungry one would not be still. He pushed this way and he pushed that way. He could not keep his wings still. The first thing he knew, he was up on the side of the nest. Soon Father Crow would bring food. The hungry one wanted to be the first one to get some of it. Down, down from the top of the high tree came the big black Father Crow. His big wings went up and down in the air, and he came down on the side of the nest. And here's the big Daddy Crow on the side of the nest. Then something happened. The hungry one was far out on the side of the nest. He wanted to be first. His little wings were out, and his mouth was open. Just then, the wind blew harder than ever. The trees shook. The hungry one fell from the nest. Down, 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 down went the hungry one. Caw, 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 cried Father Crow. The little crow tried and tried to catch the branches and leaves as he went by, but he could not catch any of them. Then there were no branches to catch, and he fell faster and faster. He tried to make his wings go, but he couldn't fly. Down to the ground he fell. He gave one little caw and lay still in the brown leaves at the bottom of the tree. He was covered with leaves. He could not see out of them. The hungry one lay in the leaves and was very still. He heard his father cry, caw, caw, caw. He heard his mother cry, caw, caw, caw. He opened his eyes. He tried to fly, but he could not. But he did pull himself right side up. Caw, 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 cried Father and Mother Crow again and again. The hungry one saw them in the air. He saw them fly around and round over his head. Their calls seemed to say, oh, what have you done? What have you done? Mother and Father Crow gave another call. This time they said, caw, 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 caw. The hungry one heard the call. He knew what they tried to say. It was, watch out, watch out. The hungry one was looking right into the eyes of a big animal. It was a big red animal with long ears at the side of his face. The big red animal seemed to come right at him. That was the way it seemed to the little hungry one. But the big red animal was not coming at him at all. The big red animal did not move. He stood as still as a stone. And here he is now. That's Pat. And you can see a little bit of the bird there. Yeah, he's such a little guy. Father and Mother Crow flew around and around. They called, caw, 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 caw. The call said, help, 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 help. They were calling to other crows. Crows began to come to help. 2 came, then 2 more, then 4, then 10 or more crows came to help. Caw, 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 cried the crows. They did not call for help now. They flew down at the big red animal and cried in his ears, go away, get out of here, get out of here. The big red animal was Pat. Pat had never seen so many crows. They were in front of him and behind him. There seemed to be crows everywhere. They came at him from all sides. He thought they would put out his eyes. Pat was the one who wanted to call for help now, but he stood his ground. Help was coming for Pat. Peter and Carol heard the noise and ran as fast as they could. They came around a big tree and saw Pat. There he stood, with the crows flying at him. Pat knew that help was coming. He heard Peter and Carol behind him. He picked up the little crow in his mouth and took it to Peter. The hungry one was afraid. He thought the end had come for him. But Pat did not hurt the little crow. Pat was a good bird dog. He could take a bird in his mouth and not hurt the bird at all. He had what's called a soft bite. Pat put the little crow down at Peter's feet. That is what all good bird dogs do. Peter picked up the little crow. The hungry one gave one little call. It was a cry for help. Then Mother and Father Crow and all the other crows came at Peter and Carol. They flew right at them. Peter pulled his big hat down over his head and ears. He held the little crow close to him and ran. "Come on, Carol," cried Peter. "Run, or they will get you." "I'm coming," cried Carol. Pat ran too. He'd had enough of crows for one day. Peter ran through the trees. He looked for a place to hide from the crows. He saw a tree where the branches came right down to the ground. He got under those branches. "Come on in, Carol," cried Peter. "This is a good place to hide." Carol was glad to hide under the branches. Pat came to hide with Peter and Carol too. The crows were still up in the air over their heads and flew around and around. Peter and Carol and Pat were as still as could be. Peter held the little crow close, and the little crow liked it. He was tired. It was warm here, and he closed his eyes and lay still. The crows could not see Peter and Carol. They could not see Pat. They did not hear the hungry one call again, so they started to go away. Each crow family had little ones to look after. Soon Mother and Father Crow went back to their nest in the big tree. The three little crows were still in the nest, and they were hungry. They called to Mother and Father Crow. "Caw, caw, caw. Food, food, food," thought Mother and Father Crow. "We must find enough food to fill 3 big mouths. Work, work, work." Away they flew to get food. All the crows had gone back to their own nests and their little ones. It was still in the woods. The nest seemed bigger now to the brothers and sisters of the hungry one. That hungry one who always pushed and pushed was gone. And now we're getting to chapter 2, a new home for Smoky. We have to figure out who Smoky is. No, we know. Smoky's the crow. Smoky gets his name. Peter looked out through the branches. He could not see any crows. "They're gone, Carol," he said. "We can go home now." Peter and Carol and Pat started home. "What are we going to do with baby Crow?" asked Carol. "Well," said Peter, "one thing is sure. We can't just put him down on the ground and leave him." "Oh, no," said Carol. "Some animal would eat him up in no time." "We can't put him back in his nest," said Peter. "No," said Carol. "We can't climb up that high tree. If we tried it, all the crows would be after us again." "I think we should take him home with us," said Peter. "That is just what we will do," said Carol. "You said you wanted a pet crow. Now you have one. Let me take him in my hands, Peter." Carol took the little crow and held him in her hands. "He's so warm," she said. "Look, Peter, his feathers have just started to grow. He is all smoky under his little feathers." That was his color, Smoky. "Smoky, Smoky," cried Peter. "That's a good name for him. When he grows up, he will be black. Smoky's the right name for him." "Oh, yes," said Carol. "We will call him Smoky. He will be a fine pet. Peter, do you think he got hurt when he fell out of the nest?" Peter and Carol sat down on an old log and looked at Smoky. "I think he's all right," said Peter. Smoky was not hurt, but he was hungry, and he started to caw. "No, Smoky, no," cried Peter. "You will have all the crows in the woods after us again." Pat sat in front of Peter and Carol and looked at the little crow. Then he looked at Peter. "What is it, Pat?" asked Peter. "Don't you like Smoky?" Now, Pat, said Carol, you must be good to Smoky. You and Smoky must be good friends. Yes, said Peter, Smoky is going to need friends. That started Peter to thinking very hard. Carol was thinking hard, too. Smoky needs friends, it says here. Yes, Peter and Carol sat on the old log and thought. I know Smoky will be a fine pet, said Peter, but I don't think my father will want him on our farm. He does not like crows. Could we keep Smoky at your house, Carol? Well, said Carol, I don't think my father likes crows any better than your father does. He says crows are bad. But crows do some good, said Peter. Yes, they do. But it will be hard to make our fathers think so, said Carol. I think my mother would learn to like Smoky, said Peter. She always likes little animals. I know what we can do, said Carol. We must get our mothers on our side. Then they can get our fathers to let us keep Smoky. That is just the thing we should do, cried Peter. We will go home right now. We will try to get our mothers to like Smoky. We must do our best, said Carol. We're going to need our mothers on our side. Peter filled his old straw hat with green grass and made a soft nest. Carol took Peter's hat with Smoky in it, and they left the woods. All the way home, Peter and Carol thought of what they would say to their mothers. We will try my mother first, said Carol. I will help you, Carol, said Peter. Your mother will feel sorry for Smoky. Yes, said Carol. Mother will feel sorry for Smoky, but she will not do anything Father does not like. And now we're going to just end that for now. We'll pick it up next time. Okay, bye-bye.